What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The Mississippi State Bulldogs are up next, and before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is, let's take a look back at what Mississippi State did in 2023. Here were my projections and predictions last year for Mississippi State. My projection had them at 6-6, and then my prediction also had them at 6-6. So I was predicting and projecting that Mississippi State would go to a bowl game last year, but they obviously came up short of that. This team went 5-7 in 2023. Obviously had a first-year head coach last year, but now they have a first-year head coach again in 2024. So it's kind of like a new rebuild and a new era for Mississippi State in 2024. But let's look at the 2023 schedule from last year. And this was the schedule for Mississippi State. They had a very tough schedule last year. They had to play Southeastern LA, Arizona in the non-conference there out of the Pac-12. Ended up going into overtime in that game, but they were able to win that game. And then they also played Western Michigan and Southern Miss, so they were able to win all their non-conference games. But then you look at the SEC schedule. They lost to LSU, South Carolina on the road, and then, of course, Alabama here in the month of September. Lost to Auburn on the road here on October the 28th. Lost to Kentucky, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. So, yeah, they had a really tough schedule last year in the SEC. Some tough road games as well with Texas A&M, Auburn, and South Carolina. But Kentucky, they definitely probably could have won that game. If they would have won that game, they probably would have been like, maybe 6-6 perhaps. But that was the schedule from last year in 2023. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here is the schedule for Mississippi State heading into the upcoming season, and before we go game by game, let's take a look at who Mississippi State will play in the non-conference this upcoming season. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Eastern Kentucky here, and then they play Arizona State here in week number 2 this season, and that game will be, of course, on the road. And then they play Toledo here in UMass, so they don't have a tough non-conference schedule. Got 3 pretty easy non-conference games, and then you got Arizona State here in the non-conference. That does make the non-conference schedule a little bit tough. It is on the road, but that's definitely a very winnable game here for Mississippi State in the non-conference. So that's the non-conference schedule for Mississippi State in 2024. Let's go back to the schedule now here and go game by game. So they start things off with Eastern Kentucky here on August 31st, and then after that they go on the road to play Arizona State here on September the 7th, and then they come back here at home to play Toledo here, their other non-conference game, on September the 14th. So they will play 3 out of their 4 non-conference games to kick off the first 3 weeks, and then after that they open up SEC play here at home against Florida here on September the 21st. Then they go on the road to play Texas here on September the 28th, and then they get their first bye week here of the season in the first weekend in the month of October. Then they go on the road to play Georgia coming out of the bye week here, and that game will be, of course, on the road here on October the 12th. So they got back-to-back road games here with Texas and Georgia. That is just very brutal, but they do get a bye week in between those 2 road games, so it's not like back-to-back weeks. If they had to play them back-to-back weeks, that would just be definitely more brutal. But they do play Texas A&M here coming back here at home on October the 19th. And then they play here at home against Arkansas here on October the 26th. Then they get to the month of November. They'll play UMass here on November the 2nd, their other non-conference game. Then they go on the road to play Tennessee here on November the 9th. Another very tough road game for Mississippi State. And then they get their second bye week here in the 3rd weekend of the month of November. They come out of the bye week to play Missouri here on November 23rd. And then they close things out with the Egg Bowl here on the road at Ole Miss here on November 30th. So that's the schedule for Mississippi State in 2024. It is a very brutal schedule for Mississippi State. I mean, you look at this schedule, some very tough road games in the SEC with Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. And then you also got Arizona State in the non-conference on the road as well. Yeah, this is a pretty brutal schedule. The non-conference schedule is not too tough, but again, Arizona State in the non-conference on the road, that still makes it a little bit tougher, but you got Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Ole Miss, 4 games here on the road, and potentially all 4 teams that are potentially like top 10 teams and also college football playoff contenders. So yeah, this schedule is very brutal for Mississippi State in 2024. But let's get to the projection here and find out. This is not going to be my official prediction. This is simply going to be my projection based on how tough the schedule is, and this is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1 20% game in the red, that percentage is counted as an automatic loss here. 20% games in the orange are going to be games where Mississippi State will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs, and then 40% games here in the yellow are going to be games where Mississippi State will be about a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown, and then 50-50 games will of course stay in the white. Games I think can go either way, and then 60% games here in the purple are going to be games where Mississippi State will be favored by about a touchdown, and then 80% games here in the blue, they're going to be favored by a couple touchdowns and also by double digits, and then the 99% games here in the green, these are counted as the automatic wins here in this projection as well. So we'll start with the easy wins here for Mississippi State, the automatic wins, I should say, here for 2024. And I think you've got 3 automatic wins here for Mississippi State: Eastern Kentucky, Toledo, and UMass. Eastern Kentucky and UMass are 2 games that could be over 95%, and then the Toledo game. Toledo was not that bad of a team last year. They were a pretty good group of 5 teams, so you kind of don't want to sleep on that one if you're Mississippi State. I think all 3 of these games, Mississippi State has no reason to lose these 3 games. They're all non-conference games that are all played here at home at least, so I think Mississippi State will be favored in all 3 of these games, and you can count them as automatic wins. They're not guaranteed wins, but we count them as automatic wins here in these projections. So those 3 games, I think Mississippi State will be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And then you look at the rest of the games here on the schedule. There's not really any other games on here that can favor Mississippi State by double digits and also by about a touchdown, just how tough this schedule is. So let's skip over to the games now where Mississippi State will be underdogs in. I do have a couple of red games on here that are counted as automatic losses here for Mississippi State, and those couple games are Texas and Georgia. I don't really see Mississippi State going on the road and having a chance in both of these games. I don't really see them upsetting them either way either. So I think Texas and Georgia are automatic losses here for Mississippi State. Plus Mississippi State with a first-year head coach. There's no really big chance for them to win both of these games, especially on the road either. It would really shock me if they were able to somehow upset both of these teams, but I don't really see them doing that. I think Mississippi State does get automatic losses here with Texas and Georgia, and plus they're playing them back-to-back road games, but they do get a bye week in between them, so maybe they do come out in one of those road games and kind of competes for a little while. But again, those 2 games are definitely automatic losses here in these projections for Mississippi State. So those are the 2 games where I had them as automatic losses here for 2024. Let's go to the games now where Mississippi State will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs, and I got 1 game on here in the orange, and that's Tennessee here on the road. So I think Mississippi State will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs here against Tennessee on the road. I know it's a road game. Tennessee should be favored by at least by more than 3 touchdowns, but Tennessee is a team that, is not on the level of Texas and Georgia. Texas and Georgia are clearly more talented teams. Tennessee is still a long ways away from that, but Tennessee playing Mississippi State here at home, I think they'll be favored by at least a couple of touchdowns, even though it's on the road. I think Tennessee, though, playing at home, that's definitely going to favor them pretty well. If this game was at home for Mississippi State, it definitely would be in the yellow, but I'm going to stick with it here and put it in the orange. And the reason why it's an orange game is just because it's on the road here in Knoxville. So again, I got Mississippi State about a couple touchdowns of underdogs here on the road here at Tennessee here on November the 9th. And then we go to the games now where Mississippi State will be about a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown here at yellow in the 40% category. And I got a couple games on here in the yellow. I got Missouri and Ole Miss. I think Mississippi State will be a clear underdog in both of these games. Missouri, that was very close to being a 50-50 game for me, but Missouri is definitely a team that is a team to keep an eye on the SEC this year. They're potentially a top 10 team, something like that this year. They got a lot of production coming back. And then you look at Ole Miss. I know that's a rival game. You never know what can happen, but it is a yellow game, to be honest, because, it's obviously because of that. I think, they do have a chance to knock off their rivals here because that's a rivalry game. But Ole Miss is definitely a slight more better talented team than Mississippi State is. And Ole Miss is another team that is expected to be a top 10 team this year as well. And the reason why this turned out to be a yellow game is just because it's on the road. So I think Mississippi State will be clear underdogs in both of these games here with Missouri and Ole Miss. And then the rest of the 4 games on here for Mississippi State are all 50-50 games I think can go either way. You got 3 50-50 games here at home, and all of them are in the SEC with Florida, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. 3 very winnable games here for Mississippi State because they're playing them at home. They do have a chance to probably win all 3 of these 50-50 games. Let's say they probably can win all of them, and then you count their non-conference games as wins. They could probably go 6-6 and probably go to a bowl game in their first year under their first-year head coach. That would definitely be a big accomplishment for Mississippi State heading into the rebuild for this program. But then you got Arizona State here on the road, which is definitely another very winnable game here. With it being on the road, that's definitely a 50-50 game in my opinion. I think both of these teams are pretty even in roster-wise. So I think they can win at least like 2 out of the 4 games here in the 50-50 range. But those are the games I think can go either way here for Mississippi State. Again, Arizona State here on the road, and then Florida, Texas A&M, and Arkansas all here at home in SEC play. And let's get to the projection now. Let's get a projected record here for Mississippi State for 2024. Again, this is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count those 3 green games as automatic wins, and you count those 2 red games as automatic losses. And then you average out that 20% game here in the orange at 20% against Tennessee. Then you average out a couple of these yellow games here at 40%. And then you average out the 50-50 games here at 50%. And the overall projected record here for Mississippi State for 2024 comes out to be 5-7 here for 2024. So I think this is a pretty fair projection here for Mississippi State based on how tough this schedule is. Again, it's a very brutal schedule when you got some tough road games with Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. If you're counting Arizona State here as well on the road, that's another very tough road game there. But again, a 5-7 projection is not bad for Mississippi State considering they're going to have a first-year head coach. It wouldn't really shock me if they did go to a bowl game this year, but again, this schedule is very tough, and that's the reason why they could probably miss out on a bowl game in 2024. And like I said, I think best case scenario would definitely have to be 6-6. Worst case, probably like 4-8 or 3-9. But 5-7 is the projection here for Mississippi State in 2024. Give me your thoughts on this Mississippi State team down in the comments below. What do you think their projected record is for 2024? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.